Hey everyone, how's it going? No, awesome, doing not too bad. I mean, this is a late workshop, right? It's crazy. Do y'all get to get boba or anything, or cookies, whatnot? That's good. Just by a show of hands, I'd like to get to know you. So who here is, let's say, first time hackathon? Raise your hand. Oh my gosh, wow, that's like 80% of you. How many of you have been to a hackathon more than 3 times? Raise your hand. Oh, just one, okay. And me technically. Okay, well, that's pretty good. Okay, so I got the right type of people to come. Computer science majors, raise your hand. Is everyone say yes? Who is like STEM major but not CS? Anyone? Is anyone non-STEM? Just wanna get to know. Cool. Oh, I'm just curious. What's your major?
Business.
Awesome. That's cool. Sweet. This will also apply to you. So no worries. All right, let's get started. So this workshop will be on landing your dream job or dream internship. I think just definitely being at UC Davis and just being in college in general, we get a lot of information that's thrown at us to, get an internship, get a job, and a lot of it, to be honest, tell me if you disagree, but it's a lot of typical advice, right? Just get a good resume, make sure you have a good portfolio, do well in your classes, and apply for a job and hope you get it. Throw your resume in the black hole. In this workshop specifically, I'll be sharing tips and strategies that I've used and a lot of other people have used in order to build relationships with people and get the dream job or internship, and also get it in unconventional ways. Throughout the workshop, I'll be stopping for questions as well, so you'll get to speak with me. And if you want to talk to me after, we can connect, share information on LinkedIn. Before I get started, I see a hand. You have a question? Yes, so I could just throw it up in Slack right after, so that should be good. All right, let's get started. So yeah, my name is Rohit Tigga. I go by Ro. I was one of the co-founders of HackDavis. That's my information, but I'll be sharing it also as well. So I was a CS major here. I have a variety of experience though, doing a lot of front-end dev, design, and right now I'm building a business. So just like I said, we'll be going through agenda. We'll learn what companies really look for. We'll also be going through a pre-interview project, which is a way to really get their attention, crafting a killer resume, and not only a resume, because let's be real, it's 2020, you need to have a social media presence in order to build a relationship with people, and branding yourself with side projects and defining what you truly want out of your career and life. Okay, this is for how applying for jobs really feels. I remember just finishing college, applying to a lot of jobs, emailing a lot of people. It can be a really rough experience. I think even applying for internships as a freshman or sophomore can be a really devastating experience too, because it's really tough. You're applying against people who are juniors and seniors who don't have much skills or experience, so it's really tough. You can feel dead inside. So actually my very first job as a product designer for a startup called Ethos in New York City, I took this approach. Instead of just going on AngelList, applying my resume, answering a couple of questions, hitting submit, I just emailed the CEO saying that, hey Rachel, I came across your company. I clearly told her that I was passionate about her company, her product, what she was doing. I connected with her. I mocked up a landing page to tell her, hey, this is how we can improve the website, how we can build trust, giving her an opportunity to chat, attaching my portfolio and resume. And she actually responded on the same day, which was pretty crazy. Usually you don't get that from people who are from startups who are super busy, but just this goes to show if you really do your research and come to the table with something where you did your homework, you can really get people's attention, even if they're the CEO of the company. Okay, and yeah, just trying to make sure. Okay, so how to get a job traditionally, just like I said, they tell you to, there's nothing wrong with this approach. Actually, it's a traditional approach. It can work. It's just a numbers game, essentially. Apply to a lot of places. The more, the merrier. Obviously, your tool referrals are very powerful. They definitely are. Always be networking. Study, study, study. Just like you said, a lot of you raise your hands, your CS majors want to be software engineers. Craft coding interview, elements of programming interviews, and lead code are very good to prepare yourself. And this is just to give you a high-level overview of how the typical software interview process works. Since a lot of you said this is your first hackathon and you're freshman, sophomore, this is how it works. So you got your recruiter's screening where you usually just apply online. You have your typical phone screen where you usually just have a 15-20-minute chat just to see, hey, is this person for real? Can I communicate with them well? Are they technically sound? And then the real tough part is actually the on-site interview with the typical software engineering process where they usually give you a series of whiteboard questions, maybe they send you a coding challenge. The on-site usually consists of really back-to-back whiteboarding, which will be really hard. If it goes well and you get past that round, you get an offer. But I'm going to show you something that is a little different because we like to do things differently here. So a new way to job hunt and be scrappy. Instead of spamming your resume to 100+ companies, really define what you want in terms of your values and what you want out of the job, and target companies that align with your interests and skills. So if you, for example, it doesn't have to be a specific area or like type of company. It could be like, hey, I'm really enthusiastic about blockchain companies or front-end development or design or something. Target those companies because then the people and recruiters and everyone who you talk to in the process will be able to connect with you as opposed to being a generic person. Demonstrate how you can provide value through proposing something, doing your homework, having a pre-interview project, and emailing them directly. So how companies actually recruit, this is actually a very important thing to know. Unless you are in medicine, law, job requirements are really negotiable. I know when you go on just any typical job application, they tell you, hey, it's like kind of crazy. It's like they tell you that you need five years plus experience after you graduate, but how do you have 5 years experience right after you graduate, right? And they do that just so they could weed people out and they could really have a high barrier for the resumes that they're getting because some of these companies get hundreds, if not thousands of resumes. So here's an example of a girl, her name was Andrea. She really wanted to intern for Spotify, and she actually, so every one of us probably, at least knows a lot about Spotify, uses Spotify if you don't use Apple Music or whatever, but like pretty much, we're saying it's a very, very popular company. How does one get a internship at Spotify? It's very, very hard. It's probably just as hard as, Facebook, Google, all these big names, right? To be honest. So she did her homework, just like I said. She reached out to the manager of the department she wanted to work at. She wanted to work at Consumer Insights, so she did market research specifically because she was a college student, she had experience in that, and she told them how they could improve customer retention for college students. She did surveys, she surveyed people, she made this page in a really Spotify-like manner, and she ultimately landed the internship. So just like I said, Spotify doesn't directly recruit at the college that she went to, University of Arizona. You don't need amazing qualifications. She's totally relatable. She just had some web dev experience and marketing experience. Other people with more experience applied to the role, but that did not matter because she did her research on company number one, and number two, it was very applicable and practical and really proved that she knows her shit, and she has the skills and cares about the mission and fits in the culture. Very dope. So in terms of the actual process for finding the right person to email, because this may be kind of new to you, there are a lot of ways to find it. You could use Email Hunter or the Clearbit Connect Chrome extension to find their email. You could find the department or person on LinkedIn, and just like I said, email them and attach what you have to propose. So just before I get into another example, I know this may be a lot. Does anyone have any questions on this so far? Thumbs up if you understand everything. Okay, cool. That's good. Sweet. So yeah, this was my first real internship actually for this startup called Connect in San Francisco. Just after I finished my junior year, I did this, and then thankfully she responded as well. Had a really great experience there. And now in this part of the presentation, I will be going into the kind of like social media presence and online presence and how important that is. I know a lot of times in class and just going through school, we think that, hey, if I'm a really good engineer, people will hire me, but ultimately engineering ability is only one part of the equation. Employers will have a lot of questions like, does this person contribute to open source projects? What does their GitHub look like? What does their other things that they've done in general, just as an individual, look like? Any company with common sense will probably Google your name just as a standard thing. It's not even protocol. They'd probably just do it just to get to know you. They'd probably take a look at your LinkedIn, things of that nature. So make sure that you do have those profiles, or you at least do establish some sort of positive presence. It doesn't need to be in-depth. You don't need to market yourself heavily. Obviously, we're all CS students and we all have a lot to focus on, but just going the extra mile, getting a GitHub, contributing to open source or side projects, and having a personal portfolio, resume, LinkedIn, and all of that, it really does go the next step. Because if you are in the hiring manager's shoes and you have to choose between two people, one has no online presence, one at least has a website and some stuff up, I mean, who would you choose? You choose a person with some presence because you know who they are as a person. So yeah, this is just like I said, your online presence is a factor. We are all brands nowadays. This was actually one of our co-founders of HackDavis, Christina. She has an amazing personal website, and I am using that as an example because currently, to my knowledge, I think she was working at Seattle at Amazon, so she's a very impressive person. She's been very involved extracurricular-wise too, going to a lot of tech events, doing a lot of startup events, hackathon events essentially, and she's been just very, very involved in just the overall very kick-ass individual, as you can see. So just having that first glimpse at what she's done is very strong, and employers do want to know you outside of class. It's one thing to ace all your algorithms in ECS 60. It's another thing to really present yourself this way and go to amazing conferences and really involve yourself. This is another piece of practical advice that you can take down right now. Pretty much just, I'm being totally honest, most CS majors have a really stale resume, kind of like this. It's just really the same thing in terms of how you list it, and just putting you may be a very strong engineer, you may be a very strong developer, but if you present yourself in such a way that is very hard for your recruiter to interpret, you just won't get through. And I know it's kind of unfair, but to be honest, like a lot of hiring managers and recruiters, they may not have as much detail as you would like them to have because they do have 500 resumes to go through, so you can't really blame them because they are human. So if you even put, just like I said, you can, or up here as I included, Credle.io is very great for having resume templates where you can really make a clean resume. But the actual graphic design itself isn't the important part. The important part is the content that you actually put and how you actually frame it in a way that the hiring manager sees that you do have experience. Examples of branding yourself effectively. You don't exactly have to be active on Twitter, but for example, like this is a very strong way that she did it. Professional friendly photo, tagline is tech relevant. She shares her work and interests, and this person has a very fun personality, so anyone and everyone would probably want to work with Una because she is amazing. How not to brand yourself, don't troll too much, don't be toxic. It's just a funny one to have. Yeah, yeah. I used to be a troll. Okay, so, but right here, this gets into the practical part because I know you're thinking, hey, I don't know how to design a resume. I don't know how to design a amazing website. What can I do? You don't have to be, yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah, because what you're saying is that it's kind of a catch-22, right? Because you need experience to get the job, but you can't get the job without the experience, is essentially what you're saying. And especially being a student who's just starting out in CS, who doesn't really have an internship, how do you overcome that hump and really...
Yeah, so how do you understand what you want to do? How do you think about that?
Yeah, in terms of that, there is no right or easy answer. What I would specifically do is really as your first internship, you do have to be kind of scrappy and really look for companies specifically that do have an open mind and who are willing to take a chance and really do have some sort of resources to, for example, freshmen or sophomore or people who are more first-time internship people. I know, for example, Microsoft has a program for them, and a lot of other companies do. They may not list it. I know Intel is really popular for taking first and second year students who may not have as much experience. But to your point about where do I dedicate my time and devote my time to learn something in order to get the internship, there's not a straightaway answer for that, but what I can say is, in addition to making sure that you do know your algorithms and do well on your computer science coursework and really do well on ECS 60 because everything you learn there is really taken in those interviews, I would go the next step and see, even if it may be too early, to see if you could at least have one or two interests that may differentiate yourself. For example, if you are more geared towards front-end development or back-end development or maybe full stack or mobile, seeing if you could contribute or dedicate yourself to a project there. It may not guarantee you a mobile development position or internship upon that time. However, in my experience as a freshman and sophomore, the thing that impressed companies the most was the fact that I had an Android app published and you can go on GitHub and see the code. And they weren't going to hire, obviously you're not going to hire someone who's just in college, who's an Android person to make your whole app, right? You're not going to do that. Maybe for a program or internship thing where they work on a little thing, but you're not going to just hire one Android person to do everything, right? But just the fact that you display those fundamentals and can ship a piece of software and put it out there, that makes companies more likely to take a chance on you. Yeah. Does that kind of answer? Okay. What's your name, by the way? Karina. Thank you, Karina. Your question, sir?
Hey, so I'm a transfer student, and I'm not a CS major. I'm taking programming classes right now and data science classes, but my major's not CS. I'm probably going to try to do a CS minor. One of my questions is, so I'm a transfer student, so I'm a bit older, and if you're a transfer student and you're a bit older, you've had jobs before, but not in the tech industry, what kind of internships are more appropriate? I've heard there's a lot of ageism in the tech industry. I also, I'm curious, like I've been involved in like free code camp, and I do have a GitHub and stuff. If you don't want to be a CS major, like let's say you're an economics major, but a CS minor, you're taking programming classes while you're here, but you don't want to major in that because you don't want to deal with all the math and stuff. Can you still, can you still take your programming classes, and can you still take your projects, and can you still get a decent job if your major isn't CS, and can you still get internships if your major isn't CS?
Yes. Yeah.
So, thank you so much for the question, and definitely that's a very important thing that you do bring up. Definitely, I think just like you said, I always like to give it raw and straight. There is ageism in tech. I'm not going to disagree with that. A lot of companies, to be honest, would really like to take people who are either just in college or specifically who just graduated and work them really hard because they're young people. They may not know better.
They run them in the ground, yeah.
Exactly. So just like you said, that definitely happens. So two parts of your question. And I know one you said, how do you position yourself best as a transfer student who may not be in this position compared to everyone else? And number two, can you still succeed and get that position as a software engineer if you are not a CS major? And how do you supplement coursework and really build up that technical background? For that specifically, yes, I do know a lot of people who were not CS majors or may not even have a college background in that, who are successful in software engineering. As far as having a clear-cut path for doing so, none of them do, because just like you said, you're a transfer student. In terms of like their life, maybe they took a break from college, maybe they didn't do college, maybe they just switched majors a lot of times, and they just have an atypical path, as opposed to other people. In terms of the things that I can point out to see ways that are applicable and practical that can help you do that, just like I said, I think that in terms of that, yes, there are, just like Karina's question, there are companies who do specifically look for, hey, this person has to be a third-year CS major and have good projects, and I'm more likely to hire them. In terms of your position, I think that the barrier may be a little harder if you are competing for those same positions and go about it the same way. The two things that I can say that can help you succeed as a software engineer is just going back to what I said earlier. Number one, the open source and side projects that you do to differentiate yourself as an individual, and also really using whatever other classes or experience you have to differentiate yourself as a software engineer. So the stereotypical software engineer may have very good engineering ability, but in terms of communication, leadership, or maybe having an eye for design, or anything else may be lacking. If you can position yourself in a way that, hey, I am an engineer, but I know specifically not only how to engineer and scale great products, but how to market them to the right people, or contribute also, for example, people who are engineers who also know a lot about user experience is a really attractive things for really small startup companies, because they like people who are well-rounded and multifaceted. So to your question, it is harder, but if you can differentiate yourself in some sort of way and go the extra mile with those open source projects to really tailor yourself, it can help. You had a follow-up?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been told is that, so in Northern California, I was living in Northern California for a while in the mountains before I transferred here, and there's a group that is trying to teach coding to people who've lost their jobs. Because as you probably know, amongst people who've been minors and stuff, a lot of them are finding themselves out of work right now. And so there are people traveling the country trying to create coding camps to take people who are in industries that are non-existent and trying to teach them coding. And one of the bits of advice that they often share is the best way to get work is freelance. Like, do you think freelancing work, like one of the bits of advice that I've been told, and I haven't worked in the industry so I don't know, but is that freelance work can sometimes lead to more stable jobs, or freelance work, if you can't find yourself a permanent job, freelance work might give you a good revenue source. But I've also been told by people who have done that freelance work can be very tiring in terms of the job benefits, in terms of healthcare and stuff. What do you think about that advice? I've heard different sides of that whole thing.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that's definitely a big thing with, in terms of having the path or opportunity for starting as a contract position and freelance and then getting into the company and getting full benefits. Kind of like the answer that I can give to that is, yes, that is a viable path, but you do have to be prepared for the case for if that company just doesn't want to ultimately hire you, or maybe they keep you as a contractor. I think in the early days and stages when you are building your career, you can afford to take a bet on companies that you really like, start off as a contract, and if you do have a good relationship with the people and you're comfortable working with the company and exploring whether it turns into a full-time role, I would explore that. That's kind of like what I did with my first job in New York City too. It started off as a 30-day contract and then it got converted into full-time, and it was actually better because I got to negotiate off of things I actually did rather than just coming in cold. So yeah, that's kind of what I can say there. So yeah, no problem. So I'll just go into that. So just like I said, to pick right back off, you don't need to be an HTML or CSS genius. You can use Squarespace or WordPress. Just make sure to really personalize yourself and really display who you are. Personal blurb, just like Christina did. Interests, passions, side projects, hobbies. Really answer who you are. Just what are your goals and mission as an individual in terms of your career? Obviously, we're still figuring that out, but just showing that you're interested in something on your website and showing your interest really makes a lasting first impression. So yeah, this is just an example of personal website I have. And over here, kind of really hammering that home is really define what you want out of your career. I think the first 2 years of college, we're still figuring things out as a CS major, but if you want to be proactive and successful, it doesn't hurt to ask that question now because you do have that time. It's not like you're a junior or senior, but even if you are, you still have that time to ask what are areas you specialize in. Do you want to go into back end? Do you want to go into front end? Do you want to be more of a multifaceted engineer or a person in your field? What do you really want to specialize in? Because trust me, it's just very hard to say I'm a software engineer versus 20 million software engineers who may have the same skills as you, but if you can specialize in something, that's much greater. Find out what motivates you and what your values are. Is it social impact? Is it a blockchain type of thing? Because that's hot right now. Do you like machine learning? Having that niche really differentiates yourself and gives you direction for your career, helps you connect with people, and opens up the right opportunities to really get you to that next role. Most people don't really have that and clarity in their career. They don't have that direction, and that's why in the early days things can be really tough for them. And really having that clarity and purpose is very effective. And just like I said, communication is everything. I think when you're actually interviewing, if I can give you a tip, whether you are a CS major and you're very technical and you're going to do those on-site interviews or you're not, you do have to know that technical ability is not everything. Half of the actual interviews are them evaluating whether you are a trusting, kind of like person who is reliable and can think on their feet and can really communicate with your teammates. That is everything. it's very, very hard to work with engineers who stay in a bubble. This doesn't mean you can't be successful as an introvert, because, I mean, I'm honestly, like, don't like putting myself out there all the time, right? But it's hard to work with engineers who kind of like stay in a bubble and don't really communicate things that they're doing. You may learn more about this when you work or get your first internship, but the way you become successful is really communicating right to the right people in the company in terms of what you're doing. Going to the networking phase, we hear a lot about networking. What really is networking? We kind of think about networking as handing out resumes, connecting with people on LinkedIn, but I tell you not. It's not about how many LinkedIn connections you have or resumes you hand out if you do not get the results. It's all about relationship building. You most likely work with people who you connect and relate to. If you really don't, you are ultimately just a number to them, and it's very hard for them to really have the trust and make the hire. Always follow up with them, and I'll get into that in the next slide. But I just want to hammer that home that it is about relationship building. Following up and just really leaving an impression with them, whether it's, hey, I met you at the career fair and I added you on LinkedIn, send them a quick message. Say, it was nice meeting you, and thank you for answering questions about your career and role as a software engineer at blah, blah, blah company. A lot of people really don't do that. Just, like, honestly, I've had people at career fairs tell me that, they've met hundreds of people, but kind of like from the company perspective, no one, like the students, like didn't really follow up with them on email or LinkedIn and anything, and I see students who actually do succeed and get the internship are people who just do one extra step, which is just send them an email or message. It's kind of crazy, but it makes sense because you, just like I said, you hire people who you know, who you connect to, who are in the back of your mind, so it's just how it works. ABC, always be creating side projects, hackathon, conferences, working on open source, side projects, startups, whatever. You have nothing to lose through that. You have a lot of time. While in school, try new things, be a leader, do what you love, build a lot of stuff. The biggest thing I would say is sometimes as just CS or just school in general, sometimes you're just afraid to ask for help or kind of like admit that you don't know something or that you're wrong. Really don't be afraid of that. Everything is a learning opportunity, and just build as much as you can. Here are some opportunities for students that you should all know about. GitHub Universe gives really great like developer packs. If you just sign up with your ucdavis.edu email, you can get a lot of free hosting and stuff, which is great. Host your own personal website on there. You don't have to pay anything. Grace Hopper is a great conference. There are more. And here are some fellowships that really, to Karina's question, she was saying, hey, like what kind of opportunities are there for young students who may not have a foot in the industry yet? Here are some examples of fellowships that do take people who are still emerging in their careers. They're really cool. And yeah, kind of like the biggest message that I have is just kind of like the surest way to kill your career is to compare yourself to others, because it causes you to be unhappy with where you are. It's not about being the best engineer. It's not about being the person who gets the highest grades or most popular person or whatever. Everyone here has a purpose, and you're all very talented and creative people. You're at a hackathon here at almost midnight, so you really should give yourself credit and ultimately just think about what you want to do. Don't focus on what other people are doing. Like with me in particular, I knew, even though that I did CS, I wasn't going to be the best engineer or software person or back-end person, because I just did not like low-level programming. And I really found my foot in entrepreneurship and design, and I wouldn't be able to do that if I kept on comparing myself or looking at people who are doing things and succeeding when I was not. So really just write down or really just get to know yourself and what you want to do, because even though you are a CS major, it doesn't mean that you will be a software engineer. You could be a product manager, you could be a different kind of engineer, you could be a lot of things, and you could do a lot of things with a CS technical background. It doesn't even need to be in software, so just something to really think about and something to give yourself credit for. You all are amazing, and here is my personal information. Hope you all enjoyed the presentation. Before you go out, I'd like to ask, do you have any questions? Anyone? Okay, yes.
I just thought it was really interesting that you talked about the communications things, because I'm from the Bay Area, I grew up in Palo Alto, and before I transferred to UC Davis, I started going to a bunch of meetups and stuff, and I thought it was really interesting. I met, so like, you know how there's this in a way that's politically correct. So a lot of people from India who come here as software developers in the Bay Area might be very competent skill-wise, but sometimes they find the communications aspect in our culture very different. So one of the things I found was very interesting is the Indian communities in the Bay Area have these communication classes where they teach them how to blend into our culture, how to go to a conference and communicate with people outside of their culture. And I thought this was very interesting because I went to some of these in Sunnyvale. And I was like, wow, these are some super competent people, but they're humble enough to come here and go to these communication courses so they can talk to people outside of their culture and be successful in that. And I noticed even, and that's just one group. When I was in SF, some of my friends, so I lived in SF for a while, and I'd go to raves. But I asked one of my friends who was a software developer for Blizzard, I said, well, how do people get jobs? Like, do they go online? Like, what do they do? He says, no, it's all about communication. He says, what you do is if you're in SF, you're already here. He's like, you can already meet that hiring manager. What you do is go to that party that they go to and go up to them and just be super friendly. He's like, without communication, you don't want to be creepy.
Yeah.
And he's like, you kind of have to be cool, because if you're creepy, they're definitely not going to hire you. They don't want to deal with you. Like, you have to be cool. You have to, like, talk to them. And I thought it was really interesting that, like, in all these groups, regardless of what culture, like, communication, was the key in their success. And all of these people from all these different groups, whether it's, people from other cultures or people here who were introverts that needed to become extroverts, told me that the biggest obstacle to being more than just a number was standing out and doing it in a way that was non-creepy. I just thought that was really interesting. I thought it was great that you covered that, because it seems like people go and get the CS skills, but then once they get in the industry, they find that's the hardest part. It's just being able to talk to somebody else.
Exactly, I 100% agree. A lot of times we look at ourselves just as engineers with a lot of technical ability, but at the end of the day, we are all people. Engineers don't only talk to engineers, they talk to people who are marketers, designers, business people, and ultimately, just at the end of the day, you are shipping code that goes to a product that people use. So if you're unable to communicate with those people, or they can't use your product, it doesn't matter how smart you are as an engineer if they can't comprehend that. So and to your point about connecting with people, 100%, and I 100% agree with that. It goes a long way to make that lasting first impression, be a relatable person, connect with them, really connect with them on whatever they value, and ultimately doing that. So in terms of that, if there aren't any more questions, please do. If you do have any other questions for me, first of all, I will put the workshop in the Slack for workshops, and it'll be myself or a director. I'll make sure to do that. Also, in terms of that, just make sure that if you have any other questions that you may not have here, or you want to go in depth into, feel free to send me a personal email, social media message, or just add me on LinkedIn. If if you have any questions, and I'll happily get back to you. Right now, if you do want to go in depth about, hey, this is my situation, I'm not sure what to do, we can just talk after. If you want me to look at your resume, I'll be happy to do that. Or if you just want to ask something else, and you're really confused, or maybe just want to learn, I'll be happy to share what I can. But yeah, thank you very much, and I really appreciate you coming to the last workshop on Saturday. It's pretty